Hello, independent gentleman! Exclamation point. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how well the PS6 will sell. Could its launch and reception be similar to the PS5 Pro? For me, the PS4, PS4 Pro, and PS5 were all day one purchases, so I thought the 5 Pro would follow this trend. But even with a 4K TV, I'm finding myself holding off on the purchase. I'm really curious to see if there'll be any pre-launch announcements from Rockstar showing what the PS5 Pro will bring to GTA 6. That could be the thing that pushes me to upgrade. This led me to question if the PS6 will be an enthusiastic day one purchase, or if I, along with others, will instead hold off and wait to decide if the upgrade is worth it. Oliver?
Yeah, well, that's certainly an interesting question. I think that in general, it doesn't matter. I'd venture to say it does not matter in a gigantic way to Sony. I think they probably care more about engaged users. Indeed, when you talk about, Sony having the most successful console generation so far, that's including a gigantic swath of PS4 users who are still engaged, like we discussed earlier.
Right.
So I think Sony is happy if you're playing your Fortnites, if you're playing your Call of Duties, that's great in your older platforms. If you're playing maybe newer games in the PS5, if you're continuing to invest money, I think they're happy. They're happy with their overall base of users continuing to grow, or at least be in the hundreds of millions of users, whether that's on PS6, PS5, or PS4 consoles in general. For GTA in particular, I think they'll talk about PS5 Pro if they have a Sony marketing deal. Usually developers don't talk a whole ton about PS5 Pro necessarily, unless they are like a Sony published title, a Sony sponsored title. And if they have something appealing to talk about there, I think they will talk about it. So far, it seems like they're using a TAA plus FSR1, something like that. But I also don't know, GTA 6, I think GTA 6 is getting released, I think, on May 26th, 2026 or so. And I'm not sure if next-gen PSSR will be available by the time that releases. So there could be a bit of a question mark there in regards to timing, if they would actually have time to integrate like a better quality upscaler or something that would substantially improve the experience. But in terms of whether the PS6 will be an enthusiastic day one purchase, I think it will be a cross-generation console. You're going to get better frame rates, you're going to get better resolutions, you're going to get ray tracing enhancements in some games. I guess it's up to you as to whether that's an appropriate upgrade. I think it'll be kind of similar in a lot of respects to the PS4, PS5 cross-gen period, except it will last a very long time, I suspect. So it's going to depend on the person, but I don't think Sony is opposed to you just sticking with your PS5 hardware for a long time to come.
Right. I do think that developers are actually gearing up for what would be probably the longest cross-generation transitional period ever, which would be quite a thing, bearing in mind how long cross-gen persisted for this generation. In terms of excitement, I mean, it's in terms of what constitutes a day one purchase, it's all about the games. You've got to show the games. That's the bottom line. That's the reason for upgrading. But what do you think, John? Do you think Sony can put it off?
It remains to be seen. I mean, we're at a weird point where games just, they've become too expensive and too time consuming to make. And so like the traditional console cycles that relied on exciting new software, showcasing new hardware, it's really, really difficult to do that these days. And so I really do think we really are in that sort of like iterative hardware cycle. And more so than even with PS5, it's like, I feel like it's just going to be figuring out a way to sell this to customers in a way that's interesting enough. But you're not going to be able to do like the traditional, here's the next generation kind of upgrades. And at least I don't think so. I just don't see how that's possible given what it takes to make games. More power just isn't that interesting anymore. Right. That's not,
I think my take on it is that there will be kind of like what we're seeing now, where there's kind of like a path-tracing implementation for certain games, and then there's kind of like the standard implementation. And obviously the path tracing thing could be a lot more interesting going forward once you've got a proliferation of devices that could actually capable of running it, or enhanced ray tracing or something like that. Because, it certainly can be a game-changing difference. And we're going to have these machines which will have an awful lot more processing power, graphics processing power, but certainly a lot more when it comes to ray tracing, machine learning features. The problem is, if you're looking at ray tracing and machine learning as enabling a new type of experience, how does that sit with cross-gen, which has got to be accommodated? It's going to be really, really tricky, I think. certainly going to be a challenge to actually evangelize a new generation of consoles if you're still going to be producing pretty much all of those games on the machines you already own. I suppose we will be seeing possibly the end of 60 FPS performance modes on the older hardware, kind of what we saw, with the last generation, where it was like, okay, these run at 30, these ones run at 60. I don't know. It's really difficult to tell, except, it seems to be the case that RDNA 5 is considerably more powerful than, the machines we've got at the moment. But the question is, how are we going to actually see those
what are you going to do with it?
Games enhanced? Yeah. And I think Bjorn Hard here is pointing out that, hey, the PS5 Pro is delivering an experience for enthusiast users. And that argument is not going to hold water for a whole new console generation. Interesting stuff.